Today's objective is solving equations by clearing the denominator. So one way to solve equations that involve fractions is to get a common denominator and rewrite all the fractions and solve the problem. Another way is to use the common denominator to clear the denominator. So you're saying bye-bye fractions. And I think that you'll find this is very efficient. So here is our problem. Negative 5/6 times x plus 1/2 equals 3/4. So I'm going to do the problem, tell you the steps, do the problem this new way, clearing the denominator, and then I'll do the same problem using the common denominator so you see it gets the same answer, and hopefully you'll see it's a little bit easier to clear the denominator. So you still need to find the lowest common denominator. Then you multiply the lowest common denominator, or LCM, say I'll write D there just so it doesn't mess us up. Multiply the lowest common denominator, LCD, which is the same as the lowest common multiple. I'll put this over here, LCM. With both sides of the equation, because remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. And then solve. And your solution will probably be a fraction. It usually is, because we're beginning with fractions now. But sometimes it's not. Okay, so I rewrote our problem, but I found the lowest common denominator, the lowest common multiple. I said to myself, what's the smallest thing that 6, 2, and 4 go into? Well, I know that 2 goes into both 4 and 6, so I basically just have to concentrate on the 6 and 4 and say, what's the smallest number that they both go into, which is 12. So now I rewrote it so you wouldn't see everything, so, you know, it stands out more. You don't need to rewrite it. You could just do it to the original problem. So I put parentheses around this side of the equation and parentheses around this side of the equation, and I multiply both by 12. And I wrote it as 12 over 1, just so you'll see my numerators and denominators are lined up, 12 over 1. Now here's the only part where kids get a little bit mixed up, so you just need to think about it. When I'm multiplying 5/6 by 12, if I were doing it just one, if this was the only thing I was multiplying, I could cross that out, say 6 goes into 12 twice, 6 goes into itself once, 2 times -5. But then if I've crossed this out, I'll forget about it for the 2. So I'm doing this multiplying without crossing out. So what I'm doing is dividing the denominator into the numerator of my lowest common denominator, and they will always go in evenly, and then multiplying that result by my numerator of my original fraction. That's like canceling and then multiplying, okay? So 6 goes into 12 twice. 2 times -5 is -10x. 2 goes into 12 6 times. 6 times 1 is 6, equals 4 goes into 12 3 times, and 3 times 3 is 9. So I've changed this problem to this problem. -10x plus 6 equals 9, a much nicer problem. Subtract 6 from both sides, -10x equals 3. Divide both sides by -10. It will not go in evenly. I told you most probably it'll be a fraction, but no big deal. It's just x equals -3/10. Now if you hadn't used the lowest common denominator and didn't simplify everything, you might have to simplify at the end, but normally you don't. Now let's compare this answer to doing this problem again, getting this common denominator. So we rewrite with common denominators and then solve. So here's my original problem again. -5/6x plus 1/2 equals 3/4. My common denominator was 12, so I wrote the common denominator and then got the new numerators. So it's -10x squared plus 6/12 equals 9/12. But I want you to look at something before we start. Look at my numerator compared to my problem where I've cleared the denominator. It's the same thing, okay? So here we're just dealing with what the numerators would be of our common denominator, because we did the same thing to get the equivalent numerators. So anyhow, if I had this problem, I'd subtract 6/12 from both sides. In the black, I have -10/12x equals 3/12, and then multiply by the multiplicative inverse, or the reciprocal, 10/12. These would cancel out, 1, 1. These would cancel out, 1, 1. These would cancel out, 1, 1, but this is a -1, and I get my -3/10. So this This is a lot more. I wrote smaller than this. This is easier to do. So that's what we're doing today, okay? We are not doing the common denominator section today, so don't do that today. All right, let me move this over. So I wrote kind of big in the beginning. I'm just going to tell you now. So over here I'm a little bit smushed, but I think you're fine. So here's two more examples. Solve by clearing the fractions. Here's my problem. And now I say I need a common denominator that 8, 3, and 12 go into. Well, I know 3 goes into 12, so I'm really just going to concentrate on the common denominator of 8 and 12, so that's 24. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 24. I divide my denominator into 24, multiply that result by the numerator. So 8 goes into 24 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9x. 3 goes into 24 8 times. 8 times 2 is 16. And then 12 goes into 24 twice, so 2 times 7 is 14. So here's my new problems, which would be the numerator if I got common denominators. 9x minus 16 equals 14. Plus 16 plus 16, 9x equals 30. Divide by 9, x equals 30/9. And it's okay to keep it improper as long as it's reduced. But is this reduced? No, because 3 goes into both of them, right? So we would need to say 10 thirds. And if you absolutely have the urge to change this, you don't like improper, you can write 3 1/3, but do not tell me 3.3 repeating, because the decimal is not exact if it's repeating. Okay, so this is what I prefer, and when we do slope, you must leave it like this. But, you know, if you wrote 3 1/3, I wouldn't mark you off. If you wrote 3.3 repeating, I would mark you off, because if you substituted that back in, you won't get the exact answer because it's repeating. All right, let's do another one. Negative 2/9 equals 3/4 x minus 1/6. This one, they've messed us up a little bit because they put the answer first, but that's okay. Okay, if you want to, you can always rewrite these also. So, common denominator of 9, 4, and 6. Well, this one's a little bit harder because 4 doesn't go into 6 or 9 evenly, but these share a common factor of 2, and these share a common factor of 3. So what I do is I just take my largest number and I start multiplying it by, I do the multiples of it and see if these go in. So 9 times 2 is 18, 6 goes in, but 4 doesn't. 9 times 3 is 27, okay, neither one's going to go in. 9 times 4 is 36. Oh, that's 9 times 4, and 6 times 6 is 36, so that's my lowest common denominator, or my lowest common multiple, least common multiple. Here I go, multiply both sides of my equation by 36. 9 goes into 36 4 times. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 4 goes into 36 9 times. 9 times 3 is 27. 6 goes into 36 6 times. 6 times 1 is 6. And if that was too fast for you, you need to work on your multiplication tables, okay? Because you need to be able to multiply like that. Sound like somebody else. All right, let's solve. We need to isolate our variables, so I'll do the inverse operation. Add 6 to both sides. Negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2, so my problem is negative 2 equals 27x. Divide both sides by 27. X equals negative 2 over 27. That's it. I know, you were wondering, can you also clear a fraction in an inequality? Yes, yes, you can. But remember, you need to change the direction of the inequality symbol if you are multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So here's a problem. And look, we're multiplying our inequality, our variable by a negative, so I'm going to have to change. It's got a little bit fingerprinty on it. Let's make those numbers a little better. Okay, negative 3/4 x minus 1/8 is less than or equal to 1/4. Common denominator, 8. Multiply both sides of my inequality by 8. 4 goes in to 8 twice. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6x. 8 goes into itself once. 1 times 1 is 1. Same inequality symbol carried down. 4 goes into 8 twice. 2 times 1 is 2. So here's my problem. That's a pretty nice problem. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides of my equation. I get negative 6x is less than or equal to 3. Divide both sides by negative 6. Okay, negative 6 over itself is 1. X carries down. Change the direction of the inequality because we're dividing by a negative. And then 3 over negative 6, oh my gosh, is 1 negative 1/2. That was a that was a good mistake, huh? So, but one of the things here is we all make mistakes, but you need to catch them, okay? So we need to pay attention to detail. So 3/6 reduces to negative 1/2. Technically, I should have this a little higher. All right, good. All right. Last but not least, sometimes you can combine like terms. So you don't automatically have to clear the denominator. Think about what you're doing. So here we have x minus 1/3 x minus 5 is less than or equal to 20. Well, remember, this x is the same as 1x, and I can change 1 into 3/3 because anything over itself is 1. So if I just have a single x subtracting a fractional piece of x, if you want to, you can rewrite it as whatever that whole number would be with a fraction. So in this case, it's thirds, so it's 3/3. But basically, x minus 1/3 is 2/3. So 2/3 x minus 5 is less than or equal to 20. Well, they're not all fractions, so I don't have to clear the denominator yet. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides, and then, what am I doing? I'm having a ton of problems here today. It's 25, 20 plus 5. And then, I think I wrote the problem down wrong. I think this should have been a 20. So now my problem is 2/3 x is less than or equal to 25. Multiply both sides by, I did this, I'm going to make excuses. I did this last night and I was really tired. Okay, multiply both sides by the reciprocal. I was really tired. 3/2. 3/2. And 2 does not go into 25, so we just end up with 75/2. Well, that was a good one, huh? But I want you to leave it as improper, okay? All right, that's it.